What's good, y'all? It is Friday, January 16th. My name is Patrick, and you're listening to The Morning Show. Oh, chat, I am a little stuffed up still. I feel like I've been battling some sinus things for a while. I've been trying to get into the doctor and just like regular doctor because I didn't feel like I'm like sick enough to go to the urgent care, but the soonest appointment was April. So I might be switching primary care physicians. I don't know. Can you tell I sound stuffed up? Can you tell I sound stuffed up? I've tried to edit out some of the more egregious sniffles, but I think some of them make it in from time to time. Anyways, hi. I hope your Friday is going the way that you need it to. I'm just going to talk about a couple things today because there is just so much shit going on in the world right now, and it feels impossible to try and talk about it all or keep up with all of it and be as informed as I want to be because it's just like wearing down on my mental state. And then I remember all the people who have it 100 million times worse than me and realize that it's just different. It's not, it's all part of the same struggle. We're just on different spectrums and or different places on the spectrum of the struggle against these terrible, terrible systems. And that, yeah, I think a lot of people are feeling worn down. And there are a lot of really incredible people who continue to stay informed, stay in the middle of the shit, and inform other people, myself included, that, it's like it really is takes a village. I've been doing some stuff at work that I have been listening to some inspiring people. And that was one of the things that I heard today. And I'm just like, it takes a lot of people to fight back and resist and just like create a good society. It just takes the people. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about real quick is Governor Mike Braun held his State of the State address on Wednesday. Just a quick 30-minute, hey, here's how it's going, here's how I feel, and here's where we're going to go after year one of his governorship. I wasn't able to watch live, unfortunately, but I did watch the replay and read the recaps. And overall, nothing really unexpected. I really wish, we see what's happening in Minnesota. So, in Minneapolis. So I won't say. I have a lot of wishes. A lot of people have a lot of wishes. And it seems like people are going to be terrible and continue to be terrible. And I think it's probably going to get scarier before it gets any better. So that's something I'm keeping an eye on. But the thing that I just I gotta we gotta talk about it. We gotta talk about it. The Bears. Why are we trying to bring the Bears to Northwest Indiana? First off, we already have a professional football team, the Indianapolis Colts. We are a tenth the size of the state of California, which has like 5 teams. But that's because they are so large, they can house that many professional sports teams, and they're still like a day drive away. The Bears have been in Chicago for like 100 years? Well, more than 100 years? 130 years? They are like ubiquitous with Chicago. Also, it's 3 hours away from Indianapolis. We do not need, I'm whispering because I don't want to wake up my sleeping child potentially with my emotional reaction to the Bears. The Bears. But we don't need the Bears to come to Northwest Indiana. What are they going to be? The Valpo Bears? The Maryville Bears? The Indiana Bears? Those are all terrible, terrible names. Do we even have Bears in that part of Indiana? Actually, are there Bears in Chicago? I don't think so. I was actually just talking with somebody the other day about how Indiana used to just be all fours, so I guarantee there were a bunch of Bears roaming around here. But naming aside, I have been a professional sports fan for a long time and have happened to see teams move and have become aware of like the politics behind a team moving. And a lot of it has to do with new stadiums. And generally, when a team is trying to build a stadium in a place, they sell it as like it's going to create all these jobs and revenue for the city and yada, yada, yada. In reality, though, what we see is that a lot of times residents, community members have to foot the bill via taxes in some form or fashion. And more often than not, you see teams that move maybe not do what they want to do and then move again. And so that's not a super common occurrence. But what I'm thinking about is like the one that you should look up and the one that I'll link in the show notes is the Rams. So the Rams, I believe, were originally from Los Angeles or based in Los Angeles. And then in 1990, I think, maybe in the 80s, it had to be in the 90s. In the 90s sometime, they moved to St. Louis. And they built a stadium in St. Louis, and the owner was all yada, yada, yada. They won a Super Bowl in 2002, I believe, because Tom Brady won in 2003, I think. That was his first one. Hit me up on the fact check me if I'm wrong. Okay, so they win the Super Bowl. They're a success. Overtime, though, not. They don't. It's just they're a run of the mill team. In the background of the team is like talks about the costs for the stadium, and then at some point the stadium I think got outdated, and they were trying to build a new stadium, and then eventually in the 2018 I think ish, they move back to Los Angeles. The owner takes them back to Los Angeles where they build a brand new stadium. State of the art. It's actually really nice. I've been there once. Football stadium, just massive. However, in the wake of leaving St. Louis, the community members in and around the city and the area where the stadium had to continue paying for either the maintenance and upkeep and or the demolition teardown. I can't 100% remember. I will link to what has this whole Rams story. But anyways, my point is moving the Bears not only is just a bad decision, a bad idea from like just a like legacy and naming standpoint, and just like for the integrity of professional sports in general, but the NFL specifically, it's also bad because Hoosiers are going to feel it in negative ways. It's going to be more negatively impactful to Hoosiers than we want to talk about. And now it's going to most specifically impact people in Northwest Indiana, as that's where you're going to see specific raises in taxes or whatever the case is, that require us to, or people in the community have to cover the costs of some of this stuff. It sets a bad precedent and tone for the rest of the state. And also, like, we just don't need it. We don't need another team in Indiana. We have the Colts. I grew up in Northwest Indiana, albeit on the southern tip of the region. But I will say that the majority of people when I was growing up were Bears fans. There were a handful of Colts fans. There were even smaller number of Packers fans. But by and by, people were mostly Bears fans and then some Colts fans. That's it. Like, the people are already fans of the team. The people that live in Northwest Indiana, actually, I haven't asked, so I don't want to speak for them. But if I'm going to throw out an assumption and say they don't want that. They don't need that. And they already, how can you take the Bears out of Chicago? Come on. I mean, I actually don't think they even originated in Chicago. I think they were like a Philadelphia team, and they moved to Chicago. So interesting. So professional sports is interesting to me. I like it. Okay. The second thing I was going to talk about was, well, first off, make sure you go check out the State of the State. I'll link to the recaps of it, so you can check out what he said about a lot of other stuff. A lot of stuff was covered in that 30 minutes. But yesterday morning, I was surprised to see an op-ed from opinion writer James Briggs in the Indy Star about former city county council president Vop Osili running for mayor, because he just and this on the same, I think in the same like 12-hour span, announced that he was running for mayor. Which I probably should have said. Was running for mayor, and then this opinion piece comes out in the Star from James Briggs, who notes that they are friends. And long story short, it is meant to be like this. I don't know. I think an attempt at a nuanced puff piece, I guess I would say. So 3 things about it really stood out. So the first one is literally the very first line, which said, if you gave all the residents of Indianapolis an IQ test, Vop Osili would end up in the 0.1%. That's the first sentence. And I read that and I was immediately like, I don't think that's the right first step to take. Like, to me, it read to me as if he's like, okay, this person is smarter than you, like, and will always be smarter than you. That's how I read that. Like, or at least that's how it came across to me. He then goes on to talk about a lot about architecture because he's an architect. But one of the things that he also mentions, and this is where I'm talking about like nuanced puff, because like the 0.1% of IQ, like, clearly meant to ego boost. And then it's like quickly followed up with, he's got everything you'd want in somebody to be an elected official, except for one thing. And then he calls him a petrified student at the debate. When they're on stage, like, that he freezes up when he's on stage or in like big moments, or like when he's getting interviewed right now with James Briggs. Just like he gets asked a question, this is the anecdotes that he's relaying, and then he'll like, his face will just shift and he'll just stare into the distance for like 20 seconds. Deer in the headlights. That's what it read. That's how I read it. It was like, he's just deer in the headlights. And then in one of his responses, he didn't even have an answer, I don't think, to the question. So like, I was like, okay, so you're saying that he, in a serious like situation, this person is probably going to freeze and not really know what to do. That's what I'm getting from that. So okay, on one hand, he's super smart. On another hand, he is afraid of the moment, I guess is how I would characterize it. And then Briggs does ask about the June city council meeting where Lauren Roberts came in to testify about her experience of the mishandling of the sexual assault case that she had against Thomas Cook. One of the, I think, chief of staff in the Hogshead administration, and who Vop Osili, president of the city county council, had forcibly removed from said hearing after she, quote unquote, ran over her time. I will say the way that James Briggs frames Lauren Roberts in the article is really kind of smarmy. I don't like it. He's like trying to frame it as she was the problem in that situation. I did not like it. I don't think that's like, I didn't like it. I think that's cheap writing. But that happened because Vop Osili told the sheriff's deputies to do that. He then, a couple days later, I believe, released a very half-baked apology, in my opinion. Again, in my opinion, not the best apology. And then moved forward. Most people just move forward, as if nothing happened, because that's how we treat survivors. And so he asked him about that situation, and he said again that he didn't necessarily handle it the right way. Then he said that if he was the mayor, that the situation never would have happened to begin with, and if it did happen, that Thomas Cook would have been fired immediately. So he throws out the hypothetical that if he were mayor, that would never happen. It would not, like, it's not possible. Couldn't happen. Won't happen. If he's the mayor, ain't gonna happen. I'm not going to talk about a lot. I will just say I would refer y'all to a conversation I had on Conversation Piece with Elise Schrock, who worked for a long time in the Democratic Party here in Indiana and knows a lot about the culture that the Democratic Party, the establishment Democratic Party, has in the state and in the city. And I encourage y'all to go check that out to get further context on those comments of, if I was mayor, this wouldn't have never have happened. Yeah, I'll link that in the show notes too. Anyways, so I think those three things that's really stood out to me. I am the smartest person in the room. I shrink in the moment, or at least freeze up in the moment, deer in the headlights. And when I am called to the moment and it arrives, my track record is not necessarily making the best choice. I think those three things, when I read those in this supposedly nuanced puff opinion piece in the Indy Star, my takeaway with that is that this is not necessarily somebody that I would want to lead me. Not just as a mayor, just in any capacity. Because I think, like, if I could get past I'm the smartest person in the room, what I couldn't get past is freezing up in a moment of crisis and then having the track record of probably making the wrong decision. Like, that's not the kind of person that I want leading me or the city that I'm in. And again, that's just me personally. Again, this is just my opinion. I'm just saying that I did not walk away from this piece, especially somebody who doesn't really know Vop Osili that well, outside of just the past year or so of, especially after that meeting in June, but just learning since then about a lot more about the landscape of Indiana and Indianapolis politics. I did not walk away feeling like this would be somebody I would be comfortable with leading me. 2026 is going to be a consequential year, I think. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that I have a lot of hope about how this race and other races might turn out. What I'm really excited about is that if anything, if I learned anything from redistricting, it's that there are so many people in this state and in this city who want to see it work for us to be better, to be the kind of system that's supposed to support its most vulnerable. I have a lot of hope that we're moving in that direction. And I say that with full acknowledgement that shit is scary. And that if some of these bills moving through the state house right now pass, it's going to get a whole lot fucking scarier. And these conversations are going to be a whole lot different, I think, if these immigration bills specifically make it through. But that's not the only thing. Again, not the only thing. Not the only thing. So that's it for today. Too much shit going on. And it's the weekend. Emily is heading out of town for one of her friends' birthdays. So it's just me and Van this weekend. Gonna have a good time. Yeah. You know what it is. You know what it is, my parents. You know what it is. Other than that, I appreciate y'all. Excited to keep following what's happening in the world. Well, maybe not excited to follow it, but excited to be tapped in with y'all. And hopefully we start to see lights poking through this darkness. I see them. I just want to see more of them. Yeah, I hope you have a great weekend. I hope the weekend is everything that you need it to be. And I've been Patrick Armstrong. And until Monday.